Welcome to Latin 1 Unit 2. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at Roman comedy, its origins, its characters, and its plots. You've been given a set of guided notes, so as you listen and watch this video, answer the questions. You can pause and go back to this presentation as many times as you need to in order to answer them all. Roman comedy is based on Greek comedy. So this means that political references are very rare. Instead, the family life is the focus of this type of comedy. The major themes are love and infatuation between unsuitable parties. An important element is also the portrayal of many types of personal relationships and the problems that arise from ignorance and misunderstandings. These problems lead to circumstances that could be perceived as comedic. Whether or not a modern audience finds them funny is open to debate. In Unit 2, we'll be reading comedies by Titus Maccius Plautus, or Plautus for short. Plautus was born in around 244 BCE, so that's more than 2,200 years ago. His plays are the earliest Latin literary works that have survived until today. We'll also be reading a play by another Roman playwright called Publius Terentius Afer, known in English as Terence. He's called Afer because he came from North Africa. The plays of Terence and Plautus are the only complete comedic plays that we have from Rome. Plautus tends to mix and match all Greek and Roman culture, while Terence, who we'll be reading later on, eliminated everything that could not be Romanized. So, if he thought his audience wasn't going to understand the reference, he simply got rid of it. Roman comedy fell into a number of different types: palliata, Atellina fabula, mime, and toccata. Toccata generally took place in private houses and depicted Italian and Roman characters of all classes. It's called toccata because it's named after a Roman form, hence the word toga being in there. Palliata were basically Roman versions of Greek comedy, which meant that the characters were Greek, as were all the settings. As I mentioned before, different playwrights like Plautus and Terence altered the Greekness of the setting and characters to varying degrees. So Plautus, as I said, tended to mix and match Roman culture and Greek culture, while Terence got rid of anything that he thought his Roman audience wouldn't understand. Attilan farce were masked, improvised farces. It was extremely popular in ancient Rome, and usually it was put on after longer plays like the pantomime. The name is believed to have been derived from a place, Attala, which is an Oscan town in Campania, so southern Italy. And they were thought to be the first people in Italy to have created this type of farce. They were actually originally written in the Oscan language and were imported to Rome in the 4th century. In later Roman versions, only the ridiculous characters read their lines in Oscan, while the others use Latin. Mime or pantomime depicted scenes from daily life in a ridiculous manner. Unlike our mime today, which is silent, Roman mime included song and spoken dialogue. Their plots focused on adultery and other vices. The plays of Terence and Plautus were palliata, so they followed the Greek style. The actors wore Greek-style dress and used masks. Women didn't act in this type of comedy, so masks were needed for men to play women, like you can see in the picture on the screen. The plays are full of stock characters, so figures who would have been very familiar to the audience watching the plays. It's kind of like when we go to a movie today, we know everything about what the stock character of the girl next door means. Stock characters in Roman plays included the adolescens, a young man, usually unmarried, and usually in his late teens or 20s. His action, the things he does as an actor in the play, are usually in the pursuit of love of a prostitute or a slave girl who is later revealed to be a freeborn woman and therefore eligible for marriage. The adolescent's character is typically accompanied by a clever slave character who attempts to solve the adolescent's problems or shield him from conflict. Another stock character is the young maiden or Virgo. She's an unmarried woman and she's the love interest of the adolescents. She's often spoken of but remains off stage. A typical plot point in the last act of the play reveals her to be freeborn and therefore eligible for marriage. The Senex is primarily concerned with his relationship with his son, the adolescens. So Senex is the Latin word for old man. Although he often opposes his son's choice of love interest, he sometimes helps him to achieve his desires. He is sometimes in love with the same young woman as his son, and of course the idea being here, the comedic value of this being that the young woman is far too young for the Senex. He of course never gets the girl and tends to be dragged off by his irate wife. The Lino is the character of the pimp or the slave dealer. Although the activities of the character are portrayed as highly immoral and vile, the Lino always acts legally and is always paid in full for his services. The Miles Gloriosus is an arrogant, braggart soldier character deriving from Greek old comedy. The character's title is taken from a play of the same name written by Plautus. The Miles Gloriosus character is typically gullible, cowardly, and boastful. The parasite is often portrayed as a selfish liar. He's typically good friends with the Miles Gloriosus character and hangs upon his every word, kind of feeds the soldier's arrogance. The parasite is primarily concerned with his own appetite or from where he will obtain his next free meal. The focus of these plays was also, as I said, domestic. The family is at the center of the story. They often have a father-son relationship, and in broad terms, these plays depict an outside force which leads to destabilization of the family. The destabilizing force is usually a woman and sexual passion, which in turn causes comedic chaos. The nature of these relationships is often that there is an inappropriate difference of status between the lovers, and in many cases, the young man might fall in love with a prostitute. At the end of the comedy, there's usually a happy outcome, and more or less normal social roles are restored. It's very often the case that the father figure in these comedies are idiots, although sometimes father figures themselves undergo a transformation and development of character. In summary, Roman comedy is full of stock characters. The plots are fixed and usually involve a young man falling in love with a woman whom initially appears inappropriate because she's a slave or a prostitute. It turns out, however, that there is a case of mistaken identity. The young woman is perfectly respectable and she and the young man can get married. In the process, normal social rules are re-established.